This is about, I think, my fifth or sixth MIF, so a lot of you will have heard this presentation before, or a variant of this presentation. So I want to cover the basics quickly. So Fireweed is a purpose-built company. We built the company around the asset, the McMillan Pass project in Yukon Territory. We acquired the core of the project from Hud Bay. We did deals with Newmont and Teck to acquire other surrounding ground. We have a strong insider position. We have a tight share structure. We have excellent backers. So, you know, this is an envious position to be in, and you look at the share register, I think we've really put something special together here. The project itself is located in East Yukon Territory, Canada. The resource update we did in 2018 caught a lot of people's attention. 39.5 million tons inferred and 11.2 million tons indicated, around 10% zinc equivalent, makes this a pretty massive project. And what's been interesting is that was done on just two of the four known zones in the project area. So we see an incredible amount of upside there. And even within that resource, just on Tom and Jason, you see about 4.5 million tons of contained zinc plus lead. So when you're looking globally at zinc lead projects and contained metal, on the x-axis there you have resource size, and the y you have grades. So those are ISO lines for contained metal. McMillan Pass is now one of the top 40 in the world in terms of contained metal, and we see a pretty clear eye to the top 20. And what's got us excited is, the core of the project, you can see in the east there, the T and the J that represent Tom and Jason, which is the two deposits on which the 2018 resource was built. But we started looking further afield. We did those deals that I talked about to acquire additional properties. And what really caught people's attention just recently in November is we'd acquired a property called NID off of Teck. And that contained a zone called Boundary Zone, which was known to host these broad disseminated zinc intervals, very large intervals, 200 plus meters, but also very low grade. So we came back and drilled it with a bit of different thinking, some new ideas on what the structural controls were for grade there. And the second hole, both holes were good, but the second hole in particular, the first 100 meters true thickness from surface hit just under 8% zinc. So this is about double the average zinc grade in mines globally. For 100 meters true thickness is absolutely stellar. So this got us thinking a lot, So we this cross section here, you can see the two holes we drilled this year. The grade concentrating around a sedimentary fault that we believe is the fluid conduit there. So right at that fault, you get intervals including 6 meters true thickness of 42% zinc. So we have some of the core at our little table here. But when we're pulling this core out of the ground, it was absolutely stellar. We had one interval that ended up being quadruple over limit. The lab was taking forever to produce our results because it ended up being 62% zinc, which was a meter of nearly pure sphalerite. We ended up actually releasing the news release just saying it's over 60 and we don't know what, because we had no idea when the lab was going to be able to get us the final numbers on it. They ended up titrating it like you would process a concentrate. So with some ideas now of the structural controls there, we were starting to think, okay, so what is Boundary Zone? How does it differ from Tom and Jason? What's it about? When you look at the mineralization styles there, at Tom and Jason, these are classic SEDEX deposits. These are barite shale hosted, thinly laminated, very classic SEDEX textures. Boundary Zone has nothing like that. You have matrix infill cluster placement, you have veins, you have breccias, right up to thick banded veins there. In the lower right there, everything that's beige and brown is sphalerite in that. So when we're looking at this, we're like, okay, so we think this basin bounding fault that's going past Jason and up to Boundary Zone is the fluid conduit for this. This mineralization does not look like anything we see elsewhere on the property. What is the analog for this? Because this is not a SEDEX deposit. What other deposit in the world exhibits, this sort of mineralization? And we were pulling a bit of a blank, and after some extensive research, we found some papers on some of the new discoveries Teck had made at Red Dog. Interesting things about the new zones at Red Dog, that the new deposits they found there, is that at the bottom of them, it's what Teck refers to as vein ore, or the vein horizon. And if you look at the photos there, it looks a startling amount like what we see at Boundary Zone. And so what happens at Red Dog is these vein horizon, you've got these veins, the fluid's going upwards, fractures and veining, and then it hits a barite cap. And so when it hits the barite cap, the barite is both a physical and chemical trap for these zinc-rich fluids, and it produces these massive sulfides. So that's the true classic red dog ore is this barite hosted stuff. So we took a look at this and we thought, okay, well this is a great thing to be comparing yourself to. Now, to be clear, we see a definite genetic analog here. We don't yet know whether we have anything like the size or grade of red dog. Nobody's making any comparisons in that regard, and not yet. So with that in mind, so we're thinking, okay, so if this is a similar origin to what you see at Red Dog, where you have these vein-based horizons that feed into these physical and chemical traps, what would that look like at boundary zone? So what you see at boundary zone there is basically the lower half of that is preserved. So you've got hosting in everything from mudstone, sandstones, conglomerates, volcanics, and diamictites, and the permeability really dictating how the fluids flow through that. What we don't see at boundary zone, because it's topped at the top of that level, is whether or not it feeds into a barite horizon. What we do see within the area of boundary zone are barite horizons outcropping and barite anomalies in soil. So this is admittedly got us extremely excited, and this is about as excited as we've been about this project in a long time. So the key of boundary zone is that the core of it is this area about 400 meters by 300 meters, 200 meters thick, broad intervals from sort of 2 to 4% zinc, which is low grade, but significant tonnage. So, but the broader boundary zone is at least 1.5 kilometers long, still open, and seems the potential to be traced a lot further. So what you see on this map is everything from boundary zone to what we call the 11 Creek zone in the far west of the property, and the blue stars are all glacial erratics or boulders that are mineralized, that obviously came from up ice somewhere. Now in this area, the total distance that your glacial erratics are likely to have come is not particularly far, but still you're seeing stuff that definitely didn't come from boundary zone and may or may not come from 11 Creek zone as well. And 11 Creek zone actually, that had a super strong zinc anomaly on it that Kamenko drilled in the 80s. They drilled 2 holes, decided they hadn't found anything, and gave up and sent the core to the lab, and it turns out the second hole, the very last interval, ended in a 1.5% zinc. Now 1.5% zinc you're not going to get excited about, but you think if you drilled an anomaly, you terminated your hole in mineralization, you'd come back and drill a bit deeper. But and then Kamenko never returned to the project to do any more drilling. So this is the opportunity part of what we're seeing there, is that not only did Kamenko or Kamenko Tech ever really connect the dots with the genetic similarity between boundary zone and this area of the property and what they see at Lower Red Dog, they never actually followed up on their own anomalies that they developed. So, we're looking at zinc anomalies. Now, the issue with zinc anomalies can sometimes be that the acidic soil or acidic waters can transport them. There is a strong anomaly right over boundary zone, and there's a bunch of anomalies elsewhere. We don't know whether those are in situ or transported. So sometimes we use lead anomalies as well, which might be transported a little bit less. But we're also paying quite a bit of attention to barium anomalies. Obviously, in the conceptual model for the formation of massive sulfide here, what you want to find is where these vein horizons, which, as evidenced earlier by the intersections we hit, can be very valuable on their own, where they might be plumbed into a barite horizon. So what's got us excited is, the Tom and Jason resource is already a spectacular resource, as evidenced by our PEA, stands fine on its own, but what we're seeing in the western bit of the property and everything sort of a long trend to there is a potential to take this from a top 40 zinc project to a top 20 or better. We're incredibly excited by this, and the project continually surprises to the upside. Now the challenge for us is, the green you see in this map of the broader property is cover, so glacial till or glacial fluvial material. So the challenge is to explore underneath that. So we're using advanced geophysics and some different geochemical techniques to try to look through that. So, the story for Fireweed is that this is a very advanced exploration play that has a tremendous head start in the resource that may yet grow in quantum leaps and bounds in terms of contained mineralization. Thank you very much.